Hello, word. I'm Alex, and welcome back to your daily dose of English vocabulary. Today, we're diving into a charming little word, cottage. It's a B1 level noun, and it means small house. So, what exactly is a cottage? Well, simply put, it's a small, often quaint or old-fashioned house, typically found in the countryside or a village. Think of a picture postcard scene with rolling hills, green fields, and nestled amongst them, a sweet little cottage with a thatched roof. That's the image we're going for. You might hear someone say, they spent their summer in a cozy cottage by the sea. Or, she dreamed of retiring to a small cottage in the woods. Now, let's explore some synonyms for cottage. One is cabin. A cabin is usually a simpler, more rustic structure, often made of wood. For example, we rented a log cabin in the mountains for our ski trip. Another synonym is bungalow. A bungalow is generally a one-story house, but it can still share the small, cozy feel of a cottage. You might say, they live in a charming bungalow just outside of town. And how about hut? Although a hut implies a very basic dwelling, sometimes even temporary, it can overlap with the idea of a small, simple home like a cottage. For instance, the shepherd lived in a simple hut during the lambing season. Let's talk about opposites, antonyms for cottage. A direct antonym could be mansion. A mansion is a very large and luxurious house, the complete opposite of a small cottage. You could say, they inherited a sprawling mansion with dozens of rooms. Another antonym could be skyscraper. Although not a house, a skyscraper represents a large, towering structure, a stark contrast to the humble cottage. An example would be, the skyscraper dominated the city skyline. We could also consider palace as an antonym. A palace is a grand and opulent residence, typically for royalty, representing immense size and grandeur, the antithesis of a cottage. You might hear, the royal family resided in a magnificent palace. The word apartment could also work as an antonym because apartments are often found in large buildings in cities, contrasting with the rural setting of a cottage. For instance, they lived in a modern apartment downtown. Now, let's look at how you can use the word cottage in everyday life. You might say, I'm planning a weekend getaway to a lakeside cottage. Or, they decorated their cottage with antique furniture. You might even hear someone say, she sells seashells by the seashore in a quaint little cottage. Consider these phrases. A cottage industry refers to small-scale production, often done at home. For example, she started a cottage industry making handmade soaps. You might also hear the phrase chocolate box cottage, describing a cottage that's particularly picturesque and charming. Their cottage was a chocolate box cottage, complete with roses climbing the walls. Here are some more examples in sentences. The cottage was surrounded by a beautiful garden. They spent their honeymoon in a secluded cottage in the mountains. The old cottage had a thatched roof and a cozy fireplace. She bought a cottage in the countryside to escape the city. The cottage was small but perfectly formed. He renovated the old cottage and turned it into a beautiful home. The cottage overlooked the lake, providing stunning views. They invited us to their cottage for a weekend of relaxation. The artist found inspiration in the charming cottage and its surroundings. The price of the cottage reflected its desirable location. The family always gathered at the cottage for Christmas. The cottage had been in their family for generations. The cottage was hidden amongst the trees. They enjoyed the peace and quiet of their cottage in the country. The cottage was a perfect retreat from the hustle and bustle of city life. So, to recap, a cottage is a small house, often found in the countryside. We looked at synonyms like cabin, bungalow, and hut, and antonyms like mansion, skyscraper, palace, and apartment. We also explored how to use cottage in everyday conversations and phrases. Thanks for joining me on Hello Word. If you enjoyed this episode, Please subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Your support helps others discover the show and expand their vocabulary. Now, here's your challenge for today. Create your own sentence using the word cottage and share it in the comments below. I can't wait to see what you come up with.